Jenny reveals the truth about her life in India. With Sumit, Jenny Slatin and Sumit Singh have one of the most unexpected and talked about love stories in the entire 90 Day Fiancé franchise. Their relationship has survived cultural differences, a dramatic family conflict, a major age gap, public criticism, and years of uncertainty. But after everything they went through to finally be together, one question has continued to follow Jenny. What is her life really like in India with Sumit? For viewers who first discovered Jenny and Sumit on television, their relationship looked almost impossible from the beginning. Jenny was an American woman who had traveled to India and developed a strong connection with Sumit. But their romance quickly became complicated. Sumit was dealing with family expectations, while Jenny was trying to understand a completely different culture and lifestyle. What made their story even more controversial was the age difference between them. Many people questioned whether their relationship could survive outside the cameras. Others wondered whether Jenny would eventually regret moving so far away from her home and family. But Jenny continued to defend her relationship. For her, Sumit was not simply someone she had met through a television show. He had become the person she wanted to build her future with. And that decision came with a price. Moving to another country can be exciting when someone is visiting for a short vacation. Living there permanently is a completely different experience. Suddenly, everyday things become unfamiliar. The food, language, social expectations, family traditions, transportation, weather, and even simple household routines can feel different. For Jenny, adapting to life in India meant stepping outside the world she had known for most of her life. But there was one thing that made the transition easier: Sumit. Jenny and Sumit's relationship has always been built around the idea that they were willing to fight for each other. Before they could enjoy a peaceful married life, they had already survived some extremely difficult moments. Sumit's family was one of the biggest obstacles. His parents were strongly against the relationship, and their concerns were not something that could simply disappear overnight. They had their own expectations for Sumit's future, and Jenny did not fit the picture they had imagined for him. For Jenny, this created an uncomfortable situation. Imagine moving across the world for the person you love, only to discover that the people closest to him do not accept you. That is the kind of emotional pressure Jenny had to deal with. Yet she stayed, and Sumit stayed with her. That decision eventually led to one of the biggest moments in their story: marriage. But marriage did not magically erase all of their problems. In fact, for Jenny, married life in India created an entirely new chapter. Now she was no longer simply Sumit's girlfriend. She was his wife, living with him and building a household together. That meant dealing with responsibilities that television cameras could never fully capture. There is a major difference between visiting another country for love and actually creating a permanent life there. Jenny had to find her own sense of comfort. She also had to deal with the opinions of people who believed she had made the wrong decision. Social media made things even more complicated. Because Jenny and Sumit became reality television personalities, their relationship was constantly discussed online. Every photograph, update, appearance, or comment could lead to speculation. Some fans supported them and believed their relationship was genuine. Others remained skeptical. Some people focused on the age gap. Others questioned whether Jenny could truly adapt to life in India. And some wondered whether Sumit's family would ever completely accept the marriage. But Jenny's actions over the years have sent a message that seems very clear. She made her choice and she is determined to live with it. Jenny Slatin and Sumit Singh's relationship was never just about two people falling in love. From the very beginning, their romance was surrounded by one enormous question: would Sumit's family ever accept Jenny? For Jenny, this became one of the most emotionally difficult parts of her entire journey in India. When viewers first learned about Jenny and Sumit, it quickly became clear that Sumit's family had very different expectations for his future. They had their own ideas about marriage, family, tradition, and the kind of woman they believed Sumit should eventually marry. Jenny did not fit comfortably into those expectations. The age difference was one of the biggest issues. Jenny was considerably older than Sumit, and that created a level of concern and criticism that followed the couple throughout their relationship. From a family perspective, the situation was difficult to understand. From Jenny's perspective, however, the issue was much simpler. She loved Sumit, and she believed that the strength of their relationship mattered more than the number of years between them. But love did not make the family conflict disappear. In fact, the family situation became one of the defining parts of their 90-day fiancé story. Sumit found himself caught between two worlds. On one side was his family, who had been part of his life long before Jenny entered it. On the other side was Jenny, the woman he had chosen to build a future with. That created an enormous amount of pressure. For Jenny, the situation was equally complicated. She wasn't simply dating Sumit anymore. She was trying to build a life with someone whose family was not necessarily ready to welcome her. And that meant Jenny had to make an uncomfortable decision. Would she continue fighting for the relationship, even if it meant facing rejection? Or would she walk away and return to the life she had known before Sumit? Jenny chose to stay. That decision became one of the strongest signals that she was serious about the relationship. There were moments when the situation looked almost impossible. Viewers watched as Sumit struggled to balance his relationship with Jenny and his responsibilities toward his parents. For many people watching from outside, it was easy to say that Sumit should simply choose Jenny. But real family relationships are rarely that simple. In many cultures, marriage is not viewed purely as a decision between two individuals. Parents, traditions, expectations, and family reputation can all become part of the conversation. And this was especially important in Jenny and Sumit's case. Jenny was entering a family and culture that had different expectations from the environment she grew up in. That doesn't mean one culture is right and the other is wrong. It simply meant that Jenny and Sumit had to find a way to make two very different worlds work together. And that was not easy. One of the most difficult parts for Jenny was knowing that she could never completely control how Sumit's family felt about her. She could be respectful, she could be patient, she could support Sumit, but she could not force someone to accept her. That reality is something many viewers could understand. When you are in a relationship, you may love your partner deeply, but you cannot always control how their relatives react to you. And Jenny experienced exactly that. Over time, however, the situation began to change. The couple continued moving forward with their relationship, and eventually they reached the point where marriage became a reality. For Jenny, that marriage represented far more than simply becoming Sumit's wife. It represented years of waiting, uncertainty, arguments, emotional stress, and difficult decisions. It was the result of a relationship that had already survived enormous pressure. But even after marriage, Jenny still had to navigate the complicated relationship with Sumit's family. For Jenny Slatton and Sumit Singh, getting married was not the end of their story. In many ways, it was the beginning of a completely different chapter. For years, 90-Day Fiancé viewers watched their relationship survive family pressure, cultural differences, public criticism, and constant questions about whether they would actually stay together. Once they finally became husband and wife, fans naturally wanted to know one thing. What is their life really like now? Their married life appears much more focused on everyday life than the dramatic situations that defined their early relationship. Jenny and Sumit now have to deal with the normal responsibilities that come with being a married couple. Spending time together, managing their household, making decisions about their future, and keeping their relationship strong are very different challenges from simply fighting to stay together. For Jenny, living in India has also meant adapting to a completely different lifestyle. She left behind the environment she was familiar with in the United States and built a new life alongside Sumit. The food, traditions, social expectations, and family dynamics are all different from what she grew up with. But over time, many of those differences have become part of her everyday life. India is no longer simply the country where Sumit lives. It has become an important part of Jenny's own story. Of course, that doesn't mean everything is perfect. Their relationship continues to attract enormous attention from fans. A photograph or social media update can lead to questions about their marriage, while even small changes can create speculation. But fans only see a small portion of their actual lives. Reality television doesn't capture every conversation, every disagreement, or every private moment. Social media doesn't tell the complete story either. That is especially important when talking about Jenny and Sumit because their relationship has been analyzed by viewers for years. Some fans believe Jenny made a huge sacrifice by leaving her familiar life and moving to India for Sumit. Others believe she simply followed her heart and made the decision that was right for her. Jenny herself has consistently shown that she wants to make her own choices. The age difference never stopped her from pursuing the relationship. Sumit's family opposition did not make her immediately walk away, and the criticism from viewers did not change her feelings. Sumit also made major sacrifices. Choosing Jenny meant going against expectations within his family and accepting that his decisions could create serious conflict. Eventually, marriage made his commitment even more significant. Now the couple has to focus on something that can be more difficult than overcoming a dramatic obstacle: maintaining a healthy relationship over the long term. Romance can bring two people together, but marriage requires patience, communication, trust, and compromise. That is especially true for Jenny and Sumit because their relationship involves two different cultures and complicated family history. The good news for fans is that their journey has already lasted much longer than many people expected. When their relationship first became public, there were plenty of doubts about whether it could survive. Critics questioned the age gap, the cultural differences, and the problems with Sumit's family. Yet they continued moving forward. Today, their biggest challenge is no longer proving that they can get married. They already did. Now they have to continue building a life that makes sense for both of them. And perhaps that is the most interesting part of Jenny and Sumit's story. Their relationship has moved beyond the dramatic question of, will they stay together? The real question now is much simpler and much more important. Can they continue to build a happy life together after all the cameras, family drama, and public attention are gone? Jenny Slatton's decision to build a life in India with Sumit Singh has always been one of the most talked about parts of their story. She left behind the familiar world she knew in the United States and chose to start a new chapter with someone she had fought hard to be with. But after all these years, one question still remains. Is Jenny truly happy with the life she has built in India? From the outside, it may seem like a simple question. Jenny married the man she loved, stayed in India, and continued their relationship despite years of criticism. But happiness in a marriage is about much more than simply being together. For Jenny, moving to India required a major adjustment. She had to become comfortable with a different culture, different traditions, different food, and a different approach to family life. Things that may have felt completely normal to her in America could feel unfamiliar in India. At the same time, Jenny had something extremely important beside her: Sumit. Their relationship was the main reason she was willing to make such a dramatic change in her life. She wasn't moving to India simply because she wanted a new country to live in. She was moving because she wanted to share her life with the person she loved. That decision came with criticism. Some viewers questioned whether Jenny was giving up too much for the relationship. Others wondered whether she would eventually become unhappy or regret her decision. But Jenny continued to make it clear that her life choices belong to her. She has never allowed the opinions of strangers to completely determine what she should do. That independence is an important part of her personality. At the same time, living in another country doesn't mean that every day is perfect. Jenny and Sumit still have to deal with ordinary relationship problems, future plans, family relationships, and the responsibilities of married life. The difference is that these challenges are now happening after they have already overcome their biggest obstacles. Their relationship once seemed to be constantly surrounded by uncertainty. Would Sumit choose Jenny? Would his parents accept her? Would they actually get married? Those questions have largely been answered. Now their challenge is maintaining the relationship. That can sometimes be more difficult than people realize. The excitement of a new relationship eventually becomes everyday life. Couples have to learn how to communicate, compromise, and support each other even when there is no dramatic event happening. Jenny and Sumit have had years to learn those lessons. Their long journey has also given them something many couples never get: the opportunity to understand exactly what they are willing to sacrifice for one another. Jenny sacrificed familiarity. Sumit challenged family expectations. Both faced public criticism, and both continued choosing their relationship. That doesn't automatically guarantee a perfect marriage, but it does show that their commitment has survived serious pressure. Another important point is that fans should not assume they know everything about Jenny's happiness based on television episodes or social media posts. Reality television only shows selected moments. A happy photograph does not prove that everything is perfect, just as a difficult moment does not prove that a marriage is falling apart. The truth is usually somewhere in between. What makes Jenny's story interesting is that she seems determined to live according to her own choices. She knows people will continue to talk about the age difference. She knows some people will question her decision to live in India. And she knows her relationship with Sumit will continue to attract attention. Yet she continues moving forward. For Jenny, happiness may not mean having a life that everyone else understands. It may simply mean waking up beside the person she chose and knowing that she made the decision for herself. After everything Jenny Slatton and Sumit Singh have been through, their story has reached a very different stage. The days of secret relationships, family confrontations, and uncertainty about whether they would ever get married are largely behind them. Now the biggest question is much simpler. What comes next for Jenny and Sumit? Their journey has already lasted far longer than many people expected. When their relationship first became public, there were countless reasons to believe it might eventually fall apart. Their age difference attracted criticism. Sumit's family strongly opposed the relationship, and Jenny had to make major changes to her life to stay with him. Yet they continued moving forward. Eventually, they became husband and wife. That changed everything. Marriage meant that they no longer had to spend every day wondering whether their relationship would survive. Instead, they could focus on building an actual future together. But building a future can bring its own challenges. One of the biggest questions surrounding Jenny and Sumit is where they ultimately want to live and what their long-term plans look like. Jenny has already spent years adapting to life in India, but questions about the future are likely to remain important. Their family relationships are another part of the story that could continue developing. Sumit's family was once one of the biggest obstacles between the couple. Although their relationship with Jenny has evolved over time, family dynamics can be complicated. Even when people eventually become more accepting, years of conflict do not simply disappear overnight. For Jenny and Sumit, maintaining peace while protecting their marriage will continue to be important. There is also the question of their lives outside television. Being part of 90 Day Fiancé has given them a huge audience, but it also means their private lives are constantly discussed. Fans want updates, photos, explanations, and answers whenever something changes. That attention can be positive, but it can also become stressful. As they move forward, protecting their privacy may become just as important as sharing their lives with fans. What makes their story especially interesting is that they have already experienced the kind of relationship drama that most couples never face. They dealt with family pressure. They faced public criticism. They experienced cultural differences. And they had to make major personal sacrifices. Yet they stayed together. That doesn't mean their marriage is perfect. No relationship is. But surviving difficult periods can teach couples a lot about each other. Jenny and Sumit have had years to learn what works for them and what doesn't. Their future may therefore be less about dramatic changes and more about stability. They may continue traveling, spending time together, connecting with fans, and simply enjoying their married life. For viewers who followed their story from the beginning, that ordinary life may actually be the most satisfying outcome. After years of asking whether Jenny and Sumit would make it, fans can finally watch them try to live the life they fought so hard to create. And perhaps that is the real ending to their 90 Day Fiancé story. Not a dramatic breakup, not another huge family confrontation, but two people continuing to choose each other. Jenny's decision to move to India was one of the biggest choices of her life. Sumit's decision to stand by Jenny changed his relationship with his family. Together, they created a relationship that survived circumstances many people believed would eventually destroy it. Now, the future belongs to them. They don't have to prove their relationship to every critic. They don't have to convince every fan. They simply have to decide what makes their marriage work. And that is why Jenny and Sumit's story remains so fascinating. And after everything Jenny and Sumit have been through, their story continues to remind us that love rarely comes with an easy path. They faced criticism, family pressure, cultural differences, and countless doubts. But they kept choosing each other. Whether the future brings new challenges or simply more peaceful days together, Jenny and Sumit have already created a story that will remain one of the most memorable in the 90 Day Fiancé franchise. Now, the next chapter belongs to them. And for fans who have followed their journey from the very beginning, the biggest question may no longer be whether Jenny and Sumit will stay together, but simply what their life will look like next. One thing is certain. Their story may have changed, but the audience is still watching.